with Rink Wide chef Paterson, our Canucks reporter. And Jeff, we all saw that young stars list yesterday and went, wow, that looks pretty good. And it looks pretty deep. And it looks like guys, and I saw you wrote about this, the three guys who have already played NHL games are going to join in Penticton this weekend.
It is four, not to jump on you, but yeah, just keeping it real, as they say. It's an interesting collection because we've seen this in past years where the Canucks haven't had much in the pipeline and they've had to go out and, bring in free agents, and they've done a little bit of that. But, boy, you look at this roster, Matt, four NHLers, Aiden McDonough, Atu Ratu, and then the two defensemen, Akito Hirose and Cole McWard. So you've got four that played in the NHL. I think there were 9 guys that played professionally in Abbotsford. Then you've got Philip Johansson, who's an interesting inclusion on this list, but I kind of like it, actually, just because he hasn't played much hockey on this side of the pond. But keep in mind, too, that Nikita Tolopilo, the big goaltender, they both played professionally in Sweden last year. So, and then throw Karl Plasik, who is still in the organization, and he played in Czechia. So they've got a bunch of guys that played professionally. I would think, I haven't done a roster comparison yet, but I have to think that the Canucks have the sort of most experienced, if not the oldest roster at a Young Stars tournament. Whatever the case, it does look now like there is a prospect pipeline. There are some guys that I think you can legitimately get excited about. But in saying that, too, I noticed that the Athletic did a countdown of the top 10 prospects in the Canucks stable, and Atu Ratu is the only one of the top 5 that's actually going to be in Penticton at Young Stars because of European commitments or NCAA schooling. So the Canucks don't have their top prospects here, but they do have a lot of veteran prospects, if you will, and a lot of guys with pro experience.
Yeah, and I like Johansson's inclusion because you got to get used to the North American forecheck. And Jeff, we have seen this tournament before. There are guys who are out there to hit everything that moves and prove that they're a physical player. I think this may help Johansson adapt to the smaller ice in the North American.
We rarely see teams come in, though, guys, and dominate this event because it can be messy hockey. They're just been thrown together. I mean, considering these are pros, do you think there's a chance, though, that the Canucks can throw the other teams around a little bit? I mean, if they are pros, they should look like pros.
I think for me, it's more about individual evaluation. This isn't a tournament as much as it's a showcase. Nobody's playing for a championship or a title at the end of the weekend. And so I think the teams look at it more as an opportunity to, review what they've got, but ultimately in comparison to what some of these other Western Canadian teams have as well. But, a player like Aiden McDonough, we saw him at the tail end of last year in the National Hockey League, didn't look out of place, scored, but didn't wow us as he was still getting his feet wet. I want to see a couple of shifts where he dominates physically, like where he's just too much for opponents to handle at this level. And again, he may be playing against, major junior guys that are going to go back to their Canadian Hockey League teams or other players that are in the American Hockey League. This is more of his peer group. But remember, he's 4 years at school, like on the aging curve. He's going to be one of the older players at this tournament. So I want to see something like that from Aiden McDonough. He doesn't have to be the best player start to finish, but I want to have a couple of shifts from him that absolutely stick with me that we'll be talking about next week when we review the events. And the same goes for a guy like Atu Ratu. I mean, he spent most of last year either in the National Hockey League or if not in the American Hockey League. He's younger than a guy like McDonough, but he is rated high on the Canucks prospects chart, and they don't have that many forwards that figure in the their top prospects. Atu Ratu is certainly one of them who could, again, see time in the National Hockey League this year at a prospects tournament where you're going against some junior age players. He has to have a few moments for me where his skill and his size absolutely pop. And, I'd like to have him have a couple of wow moments that, get the building buzzing.
We should make mention that I believe the all-time record at the Young Stars was a 26 or a 27-year-old coming with, I believe, the San Jose Sharks. I want to say it was like Ben Ferrio or something of the like. So at risk of easing those, I'll say that the Canucks are nowhere near the record for old graybeards.
But bringing guys who, as Jeff notes, have NHL experience or guys who could factor in the NHL opening lineup, Jeff, like, there's a world where Akito Hirose is playing the left side of your third pair on opening night. We're asking on our Bodog poll question, do you think he'll be an NHL regular this year? And what do you make of his inclusion into this Young Stars tournament?
Yeah, I'm all for it. Again, these are, experience for these guys, even though they're a little further along in the aging curve. he turned pro right out of college, gets stuck in a National Hockey League, gets plugged into the National Hockey League, and certainly didn't look out of place. I mean, we spent a lot of time in those final couple of weeks of the season talking about Akito Hirose, and I think universally people were excited about him. That said, this is sort of starting from the start. Most prospects go through this process of playing at a Young Stars tournament. So, for him, it's just an opportunity to continue to show what he can do. But I think the poise and the polish that he showed in the National Hockey League, I want to see him control things and settle things down in his own zone. I would imagine he'll get an opportunity to run a power play when the Canucks get some power play opportunities. But for me, it's more about the defensive game, because I still think we're learning about him and Cole McWard. Like, does anybody really have a book on Cole McWard? Got plugged in. And again, those were mean-nothing games down the stretch last year. I thought he acquitted himself reasonably well, but I think most people expect that Cole McWard's going to spend this season in Abbotsford, and maybe he can push for some spot duty back in the National Hockey League. But for these guys, I think it's all about just kind of laying the foundation that, they've got that experience. Now they have to put it to use at a tournament like this one, and that would set them up then for, their first professional main training camp the following week in Victoria. So, I hope that they don't see this as any sort of slight that they played in the NHL. Why are they playing in Penticton? If I were them, I would look at this as just a longer runway to continue to show what they can do for this organization.
What do you think on Hirose specifically, Jeff? Do you think he's a player for them opening night? Do you think he's an NHL regular for them?
No, I don't think he's an opening night guy, and I don't think he's a regular. I think he's got a fair bit of competition on that left side, whether it's Christian Wolanin. I think a guy like Matt Irwin, who brings a ton of NHL experience, played 60 games in Washington last year and wasn't part of this group a year ago. So I think that's another player that a player like Akito Hirose would have to leap over. And then the other thing is that maybe somebody on the right side surprises, or maybe there's moving parts with Tyler Myers and his it's possible that both of the guys that they signed in free agency, Ian Cole and Carson Soucy, I think we're thinking one of them is going to play on the right side, at least to start the season. But who knows if somebody like Noah Juleson, steps up and makes a bid for a spot on the right side, then maybe you bring the free agent guys over to their natural left side. And again, that just complicates matters for Akito Hirose. So I think there's a number of reasons and a number of hurdles for him. I'm high on him. I liked a lot of what I saw from him. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in Penticton. But as far as an opening night spot and a regular, I think that there's still a fair bit of development for Akito Hirose before he becomes a fixture in the Canucks lineup.
You've been at the rink here recently. Does it feel good? You're going to the rink regularly. You're talking to the NHL players. I mean, you're into the swing of things.
It does feel like hockey season is here. So, yeah, it's been good. And, there's always that early September conundrum of what do you wear in a hockey rink when it's still sunny outside?
Yes.
And I don't want to bring myself to have to pull sweaters off the shelf and jeans and those types of things. So, you have to battle through. Sometimes wear shorts.
You got to battle. You got to battle through.
Hey, yeah. So, it's been good.
We're so lucky to have you and your battle with us, Jeff. Thank you for all you do.
And almost all the regulars are here. Still no sign of Vilya Mikheyev, and he remains a bit of a question mark in terms of his readiness for camp and the start of the regular season. But Ian Cole was among the last of the regulars to join this group. And I know Rick Tocchet had these great dreams of guys getting back into town in August. That was never going to happen. It wasn't. But to have the bulk of the team here 10 days into September, I still think that's a pretty good sign. And, it's pretty intense skates. Like, people wonder, what do they do at an informal pre-camp skate? And I know people have questioned the fact that Yogi Sveikovsky, the team's official skills coach, is out there on the ice and think they're going to get slapped with another fine. This is all above board. This is all legit. You can have a skills coach, and they've got Abbotsford's goalie coach. And those are the only two coaches that are out there with these NHL regulars. So, sleep well at night, people. They're not in danger of getting fined any further by the National Hockey League here.
I believe the rule is they have to request it, right?
Yeah,
it can't be from the team. They have to request it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would say the intensity has been pretty good. Now, it's all drills. It really does just feel like a basic practice here. I haven't seen them scrimmage at any point yet. I would imagine there'll be some camp scrimmages over in Victoria. But to this stage, it's been nothing but practice drills and some hard skating drills. Yesterday, for example, the first time they actually brought out a timing device and had guys doing some timed skating drills at the end of the session. It wasn't a bag skate, but they were under the gun a little bit, and I don't know the results of the skating drills. That was all on a laptop somewhere that I saw organizational personnel looking through, but not for public consumption. So I can't tell you how a guy like Brock Boeser made out relative to his teammates, but Boeser certainly was among those that were put through their paces out at UBC on Tuesday.
How did he look speed-wise? I mean, it still looked like the first step, and some of the lateral wasn't quite there. I think some people are under the... I think some people have this fantasy that he can turn into Bo Horvat as a skater. I'm not sure that's the case anymore, but what did Boeser look like to you in terms of his speed and explosiveness?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to sit here and tell you that he has gained a step or is any quicker at this stage. I didn't think he labored, and I think at times through last season and at other times in his career, his stride has looked heavy. It looked like he's kind of wearing ski boots out there and trying to get up ahead of steam. I thought there was a quickness. I'm not going to say that he was explosive out of the gates relative to some of the others out there, but in the early going, I know that when he talked last week and he talked about switching his trainers and his routine, and he didn't play in the beauty league this year in Minnesota, wanted to spend more time focusing on himself rather than, a glorified game of shinny with other professionals. So, there've been some changes, and I guess over the next week or so, I think it'll be better and easier to judge him against his peers in camp a week from now. But no, I mean, I would sit here and say the review was fairly positive in as much as it didn't look like it was a chore for him in any way to take part in these skating drills, nor should it be for a 7-year veteran, of the National Hockey League.
Tanner Pearson was out there, and intensity-wise, for what the exercise was, it looked pretty good. This looks like a guy who is throwing everything he can at the wall to make sure that he can stick at the National Hockey League level. We're not going to know until training camp and preseason as to whether or not that's a realistic option for him. But to the naked eye right now, it looks like he's full throttle.
Yeah, and I've watched him pretty closely. I think I've been out to 3 of these informal skates now, and from the first time out there, kind of locked on to number 70. And again, if you didn't know the backstory and all that he'd been through in the last 10 months, there would be no way if you came into the rink cold, you would say, hey, this guy's been to hell and back with this hand injury and the infection and everything else. So, shooting the puck, I've watched him pretty closely there. Doesn't seem to be any issues whatsoever with the shooting. Now, the issue remains his feet. And in fact, my concern is more about Tanner Pearson's feet, I think, than it is his hand after watching him skate here, the speed of the game. And as you said, Blake, and it's so right that, it's one thing to watch and try to assess a guy in an informal skate in early September. Obviously, everything's going to get ratcheted up at training camp, including the physicality. And I do wonder, if he has to try to win board battles and push off guys and those types of things, are there any lingering effects whatsoever? Right now, it's primarily shooting and skating drills, and he seems to be making the grade with relative ease. And that's a good news story in and of itself, because we haven't had the chance to talk to him. He's not going to speak until training camp opens. But I am really curious to know, when we did talk to him in April at those exit meetings, he was dejected. I think he truly believed then that his future was in jeopardy and that maybe his career was flashing before his eyes. Was there a turning point at some point in this offseason? Did he get good news from a doctor? Did he wake up one day and just realize that, he was making the progress that was going to be required to resume his career? Because, again, to see him right now, absolutely, he looks like he's going to hit the ground running in Victoria next week, bidding for a spot on this roster.
Jeff, that's marvelous stuff. We wanted to get you in a second time here today. And, of course, we'll see you at Young Stars in Penticton. Catch up on the show next week.
All right, guys. Sounds good. Looking forward to the weekend at Young Stars.
Happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day, Yellow Dog Squirrel Chaser Hazy Pale Ale.